want us to come Wednesday?
It's up to you. I've got 2 that have confirmed that they'll attend. But
Okay. Okay, well, I just didn't want to be the only one that would show up.
We will be delighted for any of you to show up. The commissioners especially will like it if you can.
Okay, I'll try to come.
Okay.
And Brent, where on the agenda will that be?
Yeah.
I believe there is I think it's the second item. I think there's something right before it, a public hearing. I don't know how well attended that's supposed to be. So sometime shortly after 9, I would say would be a reasonable time to gather.
Okay, very good.
And we are live. It is the November 30th Sedgwick County Stimulus Review Team. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for being here. Today, we are going to go back and revisit an application for the Raise My Head Foundation, as well as look at some of the processes for the municipal expenses that Brent will cover. Before we do that, though, I'd like to take a quick roll. Brent?
Present.
Hope?
Here.
Thank you. Jane?
Present.
Dr. Walker?
Present and accounted for.
Melody?
Here.
Kyle? And Mark. All right. Thank you very much. And Brent, I'll give it over to you.
Thanks, Aaron. Thanks again to you, everyone, for being here this morning for this November 30th, 2020 meeting of the Financial Stimulus Review Team. As Aaron mentioned, we've got a couple of items today. First of all, we do have some supplemental information for the remaining application. That's with the Raise My Head Foundation. And then I'll hit some high points and walk through the process that we're using to review the monthly reports that are filed by municipalities as we go about providing them with their funding. Just to let you know that to date, this team has made recommendations and received approval from the Board of County Commissioners for $19,347,819.29. About 80 different agencies, public health and social service agencies, doing good work throughout the county. So a lot of work and a lot of money is going out to make an impact as we deal with the COVID pandemic. That I would ask if there are any other items we need to discuss today. Questions?
It's not a question, maybe a request. And I'm thinking, Aaron, you were going to do this where we actually receive an updated compilation of all that's been, that the request and the awards.
Yes, and that is coming together. I apologize. The short holiday week made for a lot of work in a short amount of time. So that is coming your way, and it will actually be complete. So look for that in your email shortly.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thanks, Melody. Anything else this morning?
How much of that has actually been paid out?
Very little, because we've are waiting for monthly reports that are due from these agencies on December 11th. So
Wow.
as they're coming in, so yeah, there's
You got a lot still to do.
a lot of checks to write. Yeah, I see that Kyle has joined us. Are you hearing us now, Kyle?
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry I'm late. Can
Okay,
you hear me?
I can hear you. Yeah. Okay, then let me, Hope, are you prepared to visit about Raise My Head Foundation? We've got information hot off the presses.
Yes. Let's see. So I just sent an email this morning, if I can find it, asking some additional questions that Dr. Walker had given me. We didn't get a chance to get in touch with her, so via on the phone. So I sent her an email to see if she could maybe clarify further some of the questions that the team still had. So she said that, I'll go ahead and read it because I don't know if everyone had a chance since I sent it out this morning. She said, Raise My Head Foundation is a 2-year residential program for women who are transitioning out of human trafficking and into substantial and contributing lives in our community. We provide a safe place for women to heal from their abuse and trauma, and also provide programs that teach employment skills, finance and budgeting skills, and nutrition and healthy lifestyles so that they can earn a living and be successful when they graduate from the program. These women are identified and referred to us from other agencies in our community, such as the Women's Recovery Center and Harbor House. The women usually come to us with minimal clothing, no identification, needing medical and dental attention, and other intensive support services. We are a 24-hour, 7 days a week, 365-day program where the women live on site and receive services in our residence. In one of our programs, the women learn employment and business skills. They create, assemble, and sell various products through craft fairs, bazaars, and in our online store. In addition to other products, we sell hand sanitizer and hand soap. This program does not currently make a profit and is currently operating at a loss. When the pandemic hit, our hand sanitizer was the only product we were selling. We had to shut the program down as we were unable to purchase ingredients and make the hand sanitizer. Our goal this past year, and at the time of our original proposal, was to have a total of 8 women living in our residence and receiving programs and services. When the pandemic hit in March, our referral agencies shut down and did not refer women to us as we changed the number of women served to 4 in our later proposal. Our fixed costs for the organization remain the same as before the pandemic. They include utilities and maintenance for the house, a remote office space, and utilities at that location, and staff salaries, transportation, and other staff, which were provided by volunteers who have been taken on by staff. In addition, we had to cancel 2 fundraising events, which would have netted approximately $150,000. And that is it.
We got no costs related to COVID, I assume?
Nothing more than what was on the initial application ask.
See, their application says the cost of diverting staff, costs of compliant housing, costs of office space that became necessary due to COVID. Why can't she give us any of that? I don't understand. This is a good program.
I think the reason is because this is a residential program. Every residential program is going to have the same problem. Residential programs are all affected by COVID. They have to step up their PPE, their disinfecting, their physical distancing. And when Hope and I exchanged emails, basically what I realized was they're framing this as a lost revenue associated with a business.
Right.
That's not how we should be thinking about it. We should be thinking about these as fixed costs. So whether there are 4 women in the residential program or 8 women, you still got to pay the utility bill. You still have to do all of those things. The question is, and I do believe it's directly related, their financial position is directly related to COVID. In some ways, because they have this business, it's directed our attention to the business, and we've been trying to manage the business rather than to think about the needs of the costs associated with delivering services to the women. So that's why Hope went back and asked questions about, okay, exactly what services are you providing? How much does it cost to deliver those services? We understand that you've lost revenue during this period since March. Exactly how much has been lost? Stop talking about the business and start telling us about the residential program, which should be the focus. So it sounds like she heard that message and is now explaining more about the activities of the residential program, but we still don't have numbers. So what are the staff costs? What are the costs associated with working remotely? What are the costs associated with PPE and disinfecting? This is what Jane wants to know. This is what each one of us would like to know. So if she can provide those numbers to us, then I think we can have a conversation, at least speaking for myself.
I agree. I don't want to deny this, but she's got to give us something. We've been asking for a week.
In her defense, it's pretty complicated to think about. It took me several days of thinking about this to think about. I'm like, wait, there are fixed costs. There are costs that you have no matter how many women you're serving, and they're absorbing those costs and they don't have any resources to cover them. Or they don't have enough resources. They have some resources. So that's how Hope framed the question in the email. And then she appropriately responded, but we still don't have numbers. So let's see if we can get numbers from her, Hope, and then we can act.
Dr. Walker, can you tell me the way that you just framed that question again on the costs that are related not to the business? I can ask it correctly.
Well, I think she responded to your email the way we intended. So whatever you said in your email gave me the information that I needed. But basically, this program, like every program we've reviewed, has staff costs, right, since March. It has PPE and disinfecting costs. If some staff are working remotely, then, which is unlikely because it's a residential program. I mean, we've looked at agencies that serve people with IDD, and those people in residential care are being served by people on site. So that's what's happening here too. It should look like in the application from one of the IDD providers that are delivering residential services. So we need to know exactly what those costs are. Staffing costs, utility costs, PPE, disinfecting costs. So I would go back to her with those specific items and see what kind of costs she comes up with.
The app indicates they had costs of office space that became necessary to safely operate away. So that would indicate another section of costs that we have nothing on.
That's also true. So it's possible that administrative staff, not direct service staff, are working remotely. So were computers purchased? What needed to happen? What were the costs associated with that? These are the things we've seen in other applications from human service organizations, and we're not seeing from them.
And I think that just by clarifying that this is no different than any of the other human resource related applications that we've received, that maybe that can help guide your additional questions, or even refining some of the questions that you've already sent to the contact person, Hope, because we're not treating this any differently. And I appreciate the additional information, the additional illustration of how this is not unlike what we have funded in other requests that have come forward. We just simply need for her to provide the numbers so that we can we'd like for them to back into it, but I know we're able to do that too.
I agree, Melody. So the email back to the executive director should say, since March, what have been your administrative staff costs, your direct service staff costs, your PPE and disinfecting costs, any costs associated with administrators who are working remotely or other staff working remotely. Just give her a list and ask her to plug numbers into each of those and provide justification. So this many staff at this annual salary from March until December 30th equals.
You'd already given us staffing. We do have some staffing costs from her.
Do we?
I'm seeing them. But she was saying they were working 34 hours a week on COVID. And I think our initial question then was, well, what are you doing that's COVID related?
Yeah, so go back to the Excel spreadsheet that she sent and set aside the whole business aspect of this and just look at the direct service costs that are directly related to COVID and ask for those costs and that justification.
Right.
How much, for how long, and for what?
And for what? What's COVID related? That's where we were, what the other link we were missing.
Does that help, Hope?
Yes, thank you. I'm taking
She's
notes.
composing.
Yes, I'm taking notes. No, yes, that's very helpful. Thank you.
Well, how are we going, if this is our last meeting, to deal with that?
If she got back to Hope first thing this morning, hopefully she's watching us. It's
Okay.
really hard not to use the word hope because I use it a lot and it's your name. The first time I messed up. You have a great name right now. It's my favorite name. So I think if you email her now, she'll probably get back to you pretty quickly. And in your email, I think you should indicate we are meeting now and this is our last meeting. So
Right.
kind of last chance.
Anything else on Raise My Head Foundation? Okay, well, let's take a moment and I will walk through the process that the auditors have developed for reviewing the monthly reports for the municipalities. And that was one of the original parts of the scope for the assignment for this group was to review those, but in the essence of time, we've agreed to have you look over the process and give your blessings to that, any suggestions and so forth that you see we might be missing. So what I'm going to do, share a screen. Everybody see that? Excel spreadsheet, standard operating procedure.
Hey, Brent, can you click in the
Seeing it.
upper
So,
corner so that you can, so it's as big as it can possibly be?
Sure.
Or just make it bigger on your screen? Because I can make it bigger on my screen, but then I cut things off.
Let's see.
Yeah, there you go.
How's
Yeah,
that
perfect. Beautiful. Thank you.
That over. Okay, very good. Let me give you a quick overview of what the process looks like, and then we can walk through the weeds a little bit more to the extent that you wish. So at the top, we've got the deadlines to file for the different types of organizations that are going to be receiving CARES Act funds. Now we're managing all of this in a software solution, Salesforce. And the reason we're doing it in Salesforce is so that from there we can do the online application process, the online submission of reports, upload expenditures, upload any sort of documentation. The agreements that were signed by all the agencies are also housed in Salesforce. So we have a complete electronic record of everything that's going on, and then that will be preserved until we get on into perpetuity after we pass the deadline for having this be susceptible to potential audit from OIG. So basically the process is that the application is filed, the award is recommended or approved, or it's part of the original spending plan in the case of municipalities. Once that's done, then an account is created, and the account is where we begin then to manage the disbursement process. So that account is established A budget is built based on the total amount of award going to that municipality. And they file the monthly reports on the dates. And in the case of the cities, it was November 13th, and then again this Friday, December 4th. And then a place for them, as I said earlier, to upload expenses, upload those the supporting documentation. So in a real high-level overview, that's the process. But we've got 16 steps in the monthly report review process that the auditors are going through. And we have our 2 internal auditors, and we have also added to that team 2 external support folks from one of the consultants that we're working with to help go through this review process. So we've got 6 people going through these at this point, because we have to have a very fast turnaround from the time that the report's received until we get the funds dispersed in order to meet the deadlines under the CARES Act. So basically, once that report has been filed, if it's not on time, we give them a quick notification. We open that report in Salesforce because it's filed electronically. And one of the things we do here in step 3 is pretty critical, is that we save the original application and the original submissions to them on a PDF and maintain that in Salesforce. And the reason we do that is because we have edit capabilities within Salesforce. So just like with all of the applications for the public health and social service agencies, anything that is submitted to us, we capture that in a PDF, save it in Salesforce. And if we need to make an edit or an adjustment to it, we can do that to make sure that the funds are appropriately accounted for, but we've saved that original document. So if we make an adjustment, we still see what they originally did file. There's a verification that everything is complete. And in this case, if there is something incomplete, we can notify them and then have email traffic and so forth. And then we can make we can help complete that submission. If you recall, we did risk assessments early in the process, and this helps guide, based on that risk assessment score, what we're going to be requiring of those entities. We want to make sure that any expenses that they file are between March 1st and November 30th. And we want to know, to the extent necessary, that program narrative, how this was tied to COVID, and make sure that that's included in there, and then we'll tie back to the application. The applicants are going to be making certifications, and on the city reports, they are certifying 6 different things. One is that this is a true and correct report, that it's compliant with 2 CFR 2000, the Code of Federal Regulations, that the expenditures that they're claiming are allowable under the subrecipient agreement that they've signed with the county, that all the information is true and correct. There's a statement that they haven't falsified any information, that there's no conflict of interest. And those are the 5 certifications that they will have attested to in their application or in their account set up with that monthly report. If there is a conflict of interest, if number 5, they do have a conflict of interest, it goes to number 6. That then gets described, and they tell us when they disclosed that conflict of interest to Sedgwick County. They do math in number 10 and make sure that the totals that are listed in the 18 categories that are provided to the applicants, and these are categories that the OIG has provided us in allowable expenditure categories for CARES funds. It might be PPE, it might be personnel expenditures. Whatever those different categories are, they make sure that the sum of 18 equals the current expenditure total. Verify as well that as we're looking at things, that an expenditure category and the descriptions do match. If not, we may move things from one to another after we have talked with the agency or with the municipality. We want to make sure that the cumulative expenses don't exceed the total approved budget. If they do exceed the total budget on the municipalities, it's not going to change. They're not going to get more money as a result of that. In some of our other agencies, it's okay if they exceed it. There may be a reallocation at some point depending on what's left in the bucket. Verify the balance remaining. Is it enough to process the approved invoices? Kind of goes along with number 12. On the flip side of that, in number 14, if someone has filed a report and they have underspent or under requested based on what they are allowed or what was allocated to them, we're going to notify them that you're way under. Do you think you're going to be able to get there? And that kind of gives us an idea of what might be left over, if anything. If we get all the way to this point, there aren't any issues, then the amount being approved will be verified, submitted for approval. Here's some follow-up things in terms of any issues that we might be dealing with. And kind of the main thing with this is any of these issues that we might find, missing documentation, we'll be handling that with email, and those emails are uploaded into the application. They're uploaded into Salesforce. Anything that they provide them would also be uploaded in that software solution. So those are the kind of the 16 steps, if you will, that we go through. That was a pretty quick, high-level overview of them. If we look down at the expenditure level, we've got here the different steps that are taken to look at each one of the expenditures. It's just a little bit more detailed than looking at the whole thing that we've gone over so far. Basically just checking for the validity of those expenditures, if they're COVID related, if they fit with what was approved, and tying those numbers out with the approved amounts and the requested amounts.
Brent, this is Melissa. So all the expenditures are entered into an Excel database or some sort of database, so you can easily check all these things, right?
Right.
Yeah. Okay, good. This is a lot of work.
Yeah.
It's a ton of work.
Brent, I assume you're not looking at every receipt. Are you doing a sampling procedure? To go back to the underlying documents?
It depends in a couple of cases on the type of entity and the risk assessment that was performed. So for schools, we're not looking at all those because they were allocated on a per pupil basis. Some of the cities taking a deeper dive than in the public health. They'll take probably a deeper dive on those. It's a bunch. There's a lot of paperwork just to verify the reimbursement.
So Brent, are you saying, this is Melody, are you saying that it is a deeper dive on the expenditure for the public health and nonprofits? Is that what I heard you just say?
It would be, as they submit, because they'll be submitting receipts, if you will, for those expenditures. And then based on the risk assessment, some of them, that kind of guides the efforts of the different auditors. Pretty much everybody's treated consistently, but there may be some things that would be looked at a little bit little bit deeper if it's a higher risk request, or if it's PPE, that's pretty easy. If it's more back into some of the public health stuff, we may need to say, make sure that this wasn't paid for with another source of funds or something like that.
Sure.
Kind of expense specific.
So then I also, back to the date, November 30th, that's looming, or that's coming up, where any of the organizations, and I'm on public health and nonprofit right now, that they would do a reconciliation so that we would know, the county would know how many funds will more than likely be expended. That is, will we know as a committee, how much of those dollars, that 19 million plus that's been awarded, will actually be spent? Will we know that for the nonprofit and public health sector?
Yes. Once those reports are filed on the 11th for those agencies, once we've reconciled that information, we will provide you that information as well as make it
excellent.
public.
And that will be compiled by the organization. So we'll know per organization or just total?
We'll know by organization and by expenditure type.
Okay. Very good.
Brent, I think Jane's point is a good one. So when nonprofit organizations are audited, an independent outside CPA doesn't look at every single financial transaction. There aren't enough hours in the day, as you well know, and Lindsay and Hope know. So is there a plan to randomly select transactions to review for all of the applicants?
Shannon, are you on the call? Do you want to?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm here for a little bit. The way it's set up now, we're asking, it depends on, like Brent said, it depends on what risk level the entity ended up at. So, but we are asking for copies of invoices from everyone and possibly asking for proof of payment. That depends on their risk level. And then procurement policy for anything over 10,000 for high risk folks. The way it is now, we're asking for all that.
The last words we heard were we're asking for.
And if you're asking for it, you really need to look at it. Sorry.
Hey,
Shannon,
did you miss
all that?
You cut out really bad.
Yes.
A good chunk of
I'm
it
sorry.
in the middle.
Okay. I will try again. I'm sorry. My internet connection is kind of unstable for some reason.
It's okay.
Okay.
You were talking about what you're going to be asking for. So if you start there.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, we are. Okay, so we are asking for copies of invoices and receipts from everyone except schools. And we are asking for proof of payment for not everyone, depending on their risk level. We might ask for that. And for high risk, we are asking also for procurement policy checkoff for purchases over $10,000. And I think Brent mentioned we are getting help with processing some of these monthly reports because it is a lot of detail work. And I would say for the most part, we're looking at all transactions. That could possibly change depending on, our game plan going forward. And I think at this point, we're planning on looking at every transaction.
I think it's a good idea to initially look at all the transactions, and then if you start to see problems emerging and with respect to certain expenditures, you can drill down more carefully on those. Most of my work has been with small nonprofit organizations, not great big hospitals. Absolutely, the big nonprofits are going to be in a better position because they have a finance department to respond to your needs for documentation and to quickly respond. But I think it's a mistake to assume that the great big hospitals are necessarily going to do a better job than a community-based clinic at producing documentation. So my recommendation is to do what is common practice per FASB and GASB, which is to take the approach that an auditor uses and sample documentation associated with transactions of everybody who has received CARES funding.
Yeah, and that goes back to the risk assessment that we performed. So we looked at things like, what kind of experience have they had with federal grants, managing them? Have they had a single audit? Did it come back as a low risk auditee? Have they had financial statement audits, and were they clean opinions and things like that? So we factored all of that into each applicant and, assigning that risk level.
When we first started these meetings, I was pulling financial statements from the organizations who were applying. And I stopped doing it after a time because everybody had audited financial statements that the organization produced. And no one had anything other than an unqualified opinion, meaning the auditor thought that the financial statements the organization had produced fairly represented the financial position as of the last day of the fiscal year represented in the financial statements. So I'm concerned about your treating nonprofit organizations that don't have a lot of experience with federal dollars or with the sort of documentation that you're expecting and OIG is expecting, and all the way between you and them differently. You could miss something with the larger, well-established organizations, and you don't have time to look at every transaction going forward. You do probably now at the beginning of December, but as we move towards December 30th, I hope you have 30 people, Shannon, doing this. No, seriously. And you probably have 10 if you're lucky. So it's a question of equity, of treating every applicant or recipient the same way.
Which I would say with the risk assessment, we base it on the same questions, the same for everyone. And the financial statements, I would say most all nonprofits, like you said, do have audited financial statements. And that is something we have to go in and look at. And I would say, for the most part, they do all have clean opinions. But yeah, I don't think we have a problem with an even playing field as far as assigning levels of risk, because it was all based on the same questions and criteria.
I don't see how you're not going to have to sample somewhere. I just don't see how you can look at every payroll, every expenditure.
I completely agree with Jane, and that is standard practice. I mean, that's what firms do when they come in and review financial statements.
And you're putting a lot on audited financials. Only say, that doesn't mean there aren't a lot of mistakes in there. It just means they're materially correct, the financial statement taken as a whole. So
yeah, I agree. And that's, what we look at it, that wasn't really a very time consuming thing to do. But if you use it as a criteria, you have to at least look at it. And that's, we've gotten a lot of advice and feedback from BKD and DRS on the risk assessment process and what we included in it. So I feel like we have a sound process.
Okay.
I think you should specifically ask BKD, well, both of these entities, but BKD in particular, what their recommendations are for checking or verifying financial transactions, because they're probably going to tell you to sample.
Well, and I think this is Lindsay. Shannon, I think we've run this by both BKD, DRS, and actually even with O'Brien's, right? The SOP, and this incorporates their recommendations for what we do. Yes,
that's correct, Lindsay.
So I think what we're seeing is the recommendation from it's a combined effort of what our internal financial auditors have put together, but definitely has been blessed and endorsed, and I would say even, edited for what they think is realistic. And that's why we've had to go and get some help, because you're right, it is unrealistic to think that our two poor internal financial auditors could get through all of that documentation in a short time. I would say we don't have remotely as many cities as we do public health and social service entities, and so that does kind of give us a leg up on that front. And we will have a strategy session with those helpers this afternoon to figure out exactly how we're going to tackle this. So if there are adjustments, certainly we can follow up, but unfortunately, I think this is kind of the recommendation of what those experts have told us to do.
So BKD specifically said that you need to verify every financial transaction. And are they helping to do that?
So BKD can't help because they're actually our auditor,
right.
And so they have kind of essentially subcontracted.
They remain independent, so they're not.
Correct answer.
Right.
So
but there's an entity called DRS who has stepped into their shoes to help us with management decisions, and that's the group that we've contracted with to help us with this.
Okay, that's not a firm I'm familiar with. Are they an auditing firm? What do they do? Who are they?
They're crisis management.
Crisis management.
So basically they work a lot with FEMA and federal awards. They're an exceptionally sharp group of individuals. They're also helping us with the WSU deep dive kind of into the reconciliation for the $4 million that's being awarded there. And they've helped us develop some processes on if we were to explore some business funding opportunities, what risks and things are there. So I think we've been exceptionally pleased with them.
Okay, I'm breathing a sigh of relief right now. So that means that DRS is going to help do the verification or the validation. Yes.
Yes, we have 4 full-time individuals from them who will be dedicated solely to this task between now and the end of the year.
And they're probably really good at this and doing other CARES validation for other units of local government.
Yep, so they're actually doing the detailed transaction level type of information for WSU for every single cost, comparing it back to a source and use document and all of that. And so we've seen their forensic accountants at work, and it is quite masterful.
I'll bet it is. I would like to see that. Cool.
I will be happy to share at some point when there's not 5 bajillion emails going around. When there's a final one, I'll share it.
I'll check back with you at the beginning of December 2021.
Oh, no, don't even say that out loud, Dr. Walker. That's just mean. That's a mean wish.
No, it's not a wish. I just mean by then, virus gone, expenditures validated, life returns to normal. And I'm giving you plenty of time for vacation, relaxation. This is how I'm thinking about it.
That sounds lovely. I like it. Okay, when you explain it that way, I'll buy in.
That is what I was thinking.
What are we doing on the verification that computers were delivered, that physical improvements were actually done and placed in service, all of those issues, kitchen equipment installed and in service? Those were issues we dealt with when we were making the awards.
Shannon, do you want to speak to that, or do you want me to?
You go ahead, Lindsay.
I think for the most part, there are certifications that folks are submitting saying that they have completed the work appropriately and as described, as well as they don't have duplicative funding or anything like that. I think if it's high risk, we have not excluded the option of going out and physically checking. If necessary, I don't know that we have made that determination if that will be, though. Specifically for cities, I don't believe that is in the cards. I do think it could be for the public health and social service entities, though.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions about those processes?
Do we then have a process at the very end to unexpended funds? I think there will likely be some, to wrap them back into something else so that you don't have to return funds.
You want to take that one, Lindsay, or you want me to speak to it?
Either way.
Well, you unmuted, so go.
Okay. So you raise a very good question that is germane not just to this group, but many others where we have funding buckets. So we do already know that this team has approved awards and the commission has approved awards greater than the original funding pot. And so that means we're already going to be revisiting the spending plan. And so it is likely that the commission will need to update and revise the spending plan multiple times in December to get things corrected. If awards aren't as big and there is funding left over, then we will see what other needs are out there and make recommendations to the commission, or certainly if you all have recommendations, we're obviously willing to listen to those things, recognizing that we definitely don't want to spend $1 back after December 30th. We do have the option under the guidance to retain some funding for single audit completion related to CARES and also for record and retention. And so we are working with BKD to get an estimate for what the single audit cost over and above our normal single audit would be. We're also working with the entity that Brent referenced before that's operating our grant portal to try and do some record retention there, since the audit period does go for 5 years past the last check we cut. So we'll be reserving some funds for that. But other than that, we will make sure not a penny goes to the side at this point, just so everyone knows. Just through September, based on the personnel guidance that came out, we had over $51 million of expenses on personnel that were like frontline, first line responders here within the county, or health workers who potentially would be eligible for personnel reimbursement. We are planning only to do a very small portion of that. And in fact, it was already done for about $10 million. And that was for the health department, for all the temporary positions that we've added. We have hundreds of temporary positions now. And so that would be certainly something that we'll keep on the radar. That would be probably the easiest way to preserve those funds if necessary. And also knowing that we don't have anything in place January 1st, and it's not like COVID's magically going to disappear on December 31st. To whatever extent we're able to get some reimbursement for frontline personnel costs, that allows us to support our response in 2021.
Thank you.
One other thought, Lindsay and Shannon and company. So now that this group, the oversight group, has reviewed applications and is very familiar with the application itself, and how health and human service organizations are interfacing with it, at some point, it would probably be good for us to have a debrief with you all, that is, those of you at the county, to have a conversation about the process and the application. Can you tell it's on the hour at my house? To talk about the application process and maybe ways to streamline it, as well as the application itself, which was, I think, difficult for some to complete because of the way it was organized. I mean, and I don't know if it was organized that way on account of that's how you were told to do it, or that's how you were required to do it in the CARES funding. But and I understand why you wanted to segregate ongoing costs from expanded service costs. I get that. But if you're filling in that application, I think that's one of the reasons Jane kept saying, this doesn't add up, because if you're filling out the application in a portal and you don't have the numbers sitting next to you or your narrative sitting next to you, it'd be really easy to get confused, like we did when we were reading the applications, right? So just a suggestion to do a debrief at some point, hoping, knocking on wood, that there'll be more CARES funding, and you'll have a new committee to work with. We'll leave pearls of wisdom for them.
That means you're not going to take my calls?
Oh, I'll still take your calls anytime, okay. Brent.
All very good suggestions. So, any other comments?
There, back.
Back to normal.
Yes, I thought I'd lost you for a minute.
Hope, have you heard anything from Raise My Head Foundation?
Yeah, she called me when I had to get off, when I took off my screen earlier. She called me and said her accountant was pulling it together. That was probably 20 minutes ago. And she said she would try to get it to us before 11.
I don't think, unless Brent has more for us, that we have anything else to do. Can we review what they come up with via email and weigh in on it that way?
Well, original.
Kevin Stamper, are you on? Can you weigh on that question from an open meeting perspective?
I think that we would probably have to reconvene to take any sort of a vote. As far as providing information, as long as we don't turn it into a serial meeting with everybody asking questions back and forth in the same email.
Oh, that's true.
That would be fine. And then we could always reconvene and take some sort of a pro forma vote at that point.
Yeah, so let's see what she comes up with, or the accountant comes up with.
And
I can.
As always, Dr. Walker, if you have any questions, you can go ahead and consult with any of the staff, and that wouldn't constitute an open meeting.
Okay, thanks. Appreciate that.
Well, and my concern, Kevin, what kind of advance notice would we need to give if there was an open meeting to talk about this?
Oh, I mean, we've called special meetings of the BOCC and things like that with, a day's notice or even a few hours notice. We'd have to probably talk to communications and see how quickly they could get something posted. We just have to be able to do the meeting at a time when we can access the Zoom as needed.
So can we check on the availability of Zoom and everyone for some time this week, and then just agree to meet then?
We could do that.
Seems like that would be the safest course.
I guess I'll throw out an option. Would you want to recess from this meeting and resume at 10:45 to see if information's complete, and if not, disband then? But that might reduce or eliminate the need to have a special meeting called.
I'm happy to leave the link open and we'll see what happens.
I'm okay with that.
I think that'd be fine. If we don't get the information back by then, like I said, we can always call one in that fashion.
Hope, would you let your contact know that we'd appreciate any information by 10:45 if at all possible?
I sure will.
Thank you.
Well, then I have nothing else at this point, so we could, Jane?
We never approved the minutes. We deferred that at the last meeting.
Yes, that's
We
correct.
need to do that.
How about at 10:45, we have that conversation? I've completely forgotten what those minutes say. I gotta go back and look at them.
They're very detailed, I'll tell you that.
Brent, were you the one doing the screen sharing earlier?
Yes.
You might do that again for the purposes of the Open Meetings Act. Just type up something on your Microsoft Word that says we're in recess until 10:45, and then screen share it. And that way on this open link, it notifies the public as to what's going on.
Okay.
So do
I'll
we
do that.
leave the computer sitting on, or can we log back in, or what?
You could,
Electronically, the computer, what do I?
I'll leave
Should be able to log off and log back
Yeah,
in.
you can do that.
Same
You
meeting
can get
that-
off and then get back on.
We'll have to be
Correct.
admitted again by Aaron, so you gotta kind of pay attention again, Aaron. Sorry.
I'll do my best, Dr. Walker.
Double duty today.
okay. Well, if nothing else at this time, then we will be in recess until 10:45. And we'll see if we've received that supplemental information for the Raise My Head Foundation.
Okay, just don't end the meeting. We're leaving it, but don't end it.
The
Right.
meeting will be open. Also, just for everybody's knowledge, we are going to be muting the audio in the chambers. So if you have anything to say, put it in the chat until we come back at 10:45.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
All right, it is 10:45, so we are technically back in session and the audio in the chambers is back on. So if you have any questions or comments, we can hear you.
Yes, have we heard from the organization contact in regards to the request?
Yes, I just forwarded it out a few minutes ago. She got it to me literally, I think, at 10:42. So she was working
okay.
hard to get it to us. So
Okay. Let me check it.
it would have been a little earlier, but there was a firewall problem because she kept sending it. But our security's pretty intense, which is a good thing. But I couldn't open the file, so now we're good.
Okay.
So Brent, would you just kind of like me to walk through it? I don't know if you could maybe share it on this, if you want to share it on the screen, or I can just walk through it.
I can share it. I've got it pulled up on my other screen. So, sure.
And since we literally just got it, I'll kind of walk us through it.
Well,
Yeah.
I think we're full folks yet. Do you want to give Jane
Yeah, we're waiting.
and
Yeah, we got,
Walker a moment?
Sorry, I got a little excited. Sorry about that.
No, it's all good. I love the enthusiasm.
And so the total is a little over what, 38,000 or let me look again.
yeah, 38,651. I'm seeing.
Mm-hmm. Huh. Well, I still don't see anything as it relates to, and this, I understand we're waiting on the other members, but I mean, I see cost of doing service. I see volunteer service. There's contract services. Okay. Okay. Cost of goods sold. Well, this appears to be Does anyone else see salaries?
What I had asked her for was to put anything that she wanted to be reimbursed for.
Right.
I think that's a better way to do it. So, yeah, I don't see it either.
I only see the volunteer services, Vista. I see the contract services. Grant writing expense. The others are just their basic cost of.
Do we have something to look at?
Yes, I emailed it a few minutes ago.
I think Brent also, did you put it up also, Brent? No?
I did, and I'll share the screen here in a minute.
Oh, okay.
In fact, I could just go ahead and do that now.
Yeah.
Is that big enough to see, or shall I make it larger?
I can see it.
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay.
The only question that I was having, well, I mean, to me, this appears to be their statement of activity. I don't see anything that has to do with salaries, with the exception of contract services. That's not salary. Well, and or the volunteer services. The other expenses are cost of doing services. And I know they're saying, yeah. What are you thinking, Jane?
I'm sorry, I just got this.
Oh, you're still going through it?
Yeah, I didn't see it. Yeah, I wish they would break out their salaries as what was related to COVID.
Right.
I never did it.
No.
Well, some of these may qualify, but man. I don't know what to do.
The expenses associated with cost of selling goods, $2,720.15 are not allowed. I don't think that the advertising and marketing cost of $8,071.46 is allowed. Paying for a Vista could be related. Legal and professional fees could be related if they're COVID related. Credit card processing fees of $303.33, not allowed. Grant writing expenses, $2,200, and other fundraising expenses, maybe. Insurance, utilities, if there's no other source of funding for those activities because of COVID, then those potentially are permissible. But as we all know, the largest expenditure for any organization is personnel, and there are no personnel costs here. All this is literally what it says, a consolidated statement of activity from March through April. It just got generated using whatever software they use, QuickBooks or whatever. So we don't have details about salaries, and we don't have assurance that there isn't a funding source matched with the personnel costs and other costs that are uncovered because of COVID. So I feel like we didn't give them a whole lot of time to produce this. But I also feel like Hope has had multiple conversations trying to clarify which costs are allowed and which costs aren't. We recessed until now for the last 45 minutes. Maybe that's not enough time for them to pull the detail that we need. I'm not sure. But at this point, I think we've given them clear guidance. And I am okay with whatever decision the group makes. We turn this request down or leave it open, although I myself am inclined to turn it down.
Would
I agree.
okay.
The portal has been open since this summer, and they hadn't applied. So, I mean, they have had time.
Yeah.
But I really hate to give them nothing, so.
Would the group entertain a contingent award? And it could be contingent upon us, and as part of the reimbursement or disbursement process, making sure that, I mean, if you do tie it to any personnel, that we make sure that those are COVID related. It's an extra 10 hours a week or whatever they can produce that looks reasonable. Maybe an award up to for a portion of these COVID related expenses. And we could always submit their reimbursement request Obed O'Brien's for an eligibility review that's independent of our internal audit. So we can take one more step to get some independent verification of the COVID eligibility.
So my thoughts are along the same lines as what I was hearing from Dr. Walker and from you, Jane. I agree that the organization is and particularly, and you'll have to excuse me because I'm driving right now, but particularly the population that they focus on. I would love to be able to help and assist them in working with. However, the information, we have spent quite some time, not my time personally, but staff time, Sedgwick County. And I'm thinking that the questions that have been asked have been tailored fairly tailored to the point where hopefully the receiving end, the contact, and it looks like her name may be Pat, is understanding what it is that we're asking for. So I don't know in terms of contingency if we're going to do it up to a certain amount, and if we're including salaries, then that means that we're literally going to have to ask again and kind of lead and or walk them through that. And if that's what we feel we should be doing, then, allow the committee can vote yes to that. But I think there's been enough. I think there's been quite a bit of time that's been spent to try and work this organization through the requests that have been made. So some of the costs that I see here.
Can I make a quick note real quick? She just called me.
Okay.
She sent the wrong attachment to me whenever she was forwarding it over because she had to put it into a PDF so that it could go through our system.
Okay.
Salaries aren't on here. She's going to be sending that in just a moment, but I just wanted to put that out there real quick. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, well, that's what we've been looking for. So, yeah.
Well, can we review before we get that? Okay, this is a residential facility. If do the salaries and costs have to be something additional there or extra time due to COVID, or is it simply their cost? Because we haven't done that with other residential facilities. We've paid for extra payroll, extra staff, but we haven't gone back and just covered existing staff unless their duties were changed to COVID, have we? I'm trying to think what to do with payroll when we get it.
Yeah, no, I totally agree that I think the other residential facilities, I'm thinking of, I know it was Children's Home, there was another smaller organization.
Right.
Yeah, it was additional.
And yes, staff to deal with.
Yeah, directly related to COVID-related expenses. So no, I don't think we need to deviate from that.
Well, then we need more than just, this is what our payroll was. We need, what were these staff doing that they had to do because of COVID?
Right.
And we've never gotten that from her.
Exactly. And we have been asking for that. I think we've been very, very specific in the ask.
Have you gotten anything like that, Hope?
When I had asked prior what they were doing, I don't know if you remember, we had the conversation where she said they were driving the women to it. She said it's mostly transportation, getting them to appointments, taking them to look for job interviews, things like that. So she said that's what the staff is doing with their time now, since they aren't able to run their business like they were.
But how is that COVID?
Well, first of all, that's not an accurate description of what they're doing. So that was what she said in the first email, or one of the first emails. But her most recent email to you, Hope, explains the services that they're providing, which are just as I would expect, as Harbor House or any residential program would be providing. The question is, so for me, working at home basically doubles my time to do most anything, because I have to log into so many different systems, and probably other people are experiencing this as well. So did administrative staff need laptops? Did they need software? And we're on the hour again, sorry. Did they need laptops? What did they need to be able to work remotely? Are staff actually spending time disinfecting and sanitizing? What are the costs associated with PPE and hand sanitizer and so on and so forth? Are there services that they're finding they're having to provide support services in the residential setting that they didn't have to before because of the circumstances women find themselves in? So they're adding activities or doing different things because of COVID, because of coping with COVID. So that's what we're expecting, not just here are the number of people we employ and here's how much we paid them from March until December 30, but rather they need to do a sort of time study. And if they do it back of the envelope, I'm okay with that. But what staff time what has changed about the role of residential direct service staff since March that is directly related to COVID? How have services changed?
Right. But haven't you asked that question from the beginning?
No. So I think we keep missing each other. And because Hope and I keep exchanging emails, I think through that process, we've clarified why they're not understanding and what they're not understanding. And I feel that we're getting closer to the information that we need as we explain what we're looking for, what's fundable and what's not. And we did this with Goodwill. We finally threw up our hands with Goodwill and just said, okay, these numbers won't add up, but these things qualify. This is what we're funding. And this could be such a situation. I don't know.
Still waiting on an email.
Yes. Do you think maybe we should just, I don't know what go through this list that we have right now, or what are your thoughts on what we should approve or discuss in the meantime?
Based on the information that we have before us, I can see needing funding for the Vista volunteer services person for that stipend, and that might be possibly related to COVID. Property insurance and utility costs, possibly. Mileage, auto, if you're having to transport clients more, that could be potentially reimbursable because that's an additional cost. I don't know how to think about cell phone expenses unless it's directly COVID related, or rent, or internet expenses, although cell and internet expenses are potentially COVID related because you have to have more of that stuff in place to work remotely and to do what you do in a residential program. So I'm up to about $10,000 roughly. I'm just doing this off the top of my head, maybe a little bit more, of what appear to be allowable expenses without consideration of any staff costs or PPE or hand sanitation costs.
Well, could we just award them 10, 15,000 and they have to provide more in terms of receipts and COVID explanations or something? Is that,
Sure.
I don't know what to do at this point. I hate to just do nothing, but
What's kind of curious about the statement of activity is I'm not seeing salary expenses. Why not?
I don't know. She just did a portion of her, I don't know. I don't think they know quite what they're doing. They're struggling to how to respond to what we want.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we struggle to respond to what we want, so I completely sympathize.
Can we just say we would award up to $15,000 subject to them providing receipts for PPE, work from home, additional costs related to COVID, disinfecting costs, or is that too open-ended?
No, and that's sort of defining, I don't think it's too open-ended. It's defining that within these categories, these are COVID-related expenditures that we would approve reimbursement for. And
I hate to do that because your guys' time is already so committed.
Mhm.
I hate throwing something else on you to do.
I think it might be helpful to whoever is going to be the winner of this application, whether it's Shannon or Cassandra. They have a little bit more insight into maybe wording it better than I do, and or talking them through, this is the kind of information we need. Like, we don't need an operating statement of activity or something like that. We need actual expenses that are related to COVID that are additional. So can you please break those out? They're a little bit better at explaining that, and they've been doing this with all the other applicants. So that's just a side note that they have a lot of extra information that they can help them with and hold their hands a little bit too, if you decide to go forward with this application.
Well, I think I'd be willing to do that.
And that narrative that ties it to COVID is part of what they're looking for. So we can.
Right.
Do we want to try and include something for COVID-related, additional COVID-related personnel expenditures?
Do we think their people are going to be substantially dedicated to COVID,
No,
like in their payroll stuff?
No, I don't think so.
I don't think they are. I think they just sort of maintain. They haven't really proactively addressed COVID, and maybe they can't.
Well, that's the tricky part, I think, is why you don't get a lot of payroll, is because of the word substantial, and trying to fit that square peg into a round hole, it just is hard. And I think they've created these like different other categories for public health responders and certain things that you can qualify. But for a lot of these, it's like Dr. Walker said, they have to spend some more time cleaning and doing some things, but is it substantial or not? That's the hard part.
Well, you'd think they'd even be testing women in this facility, maybe, that they'd have some testing costs, but apparently not. Well, I don't know the number, but could we do like up to 15,000, 20,000?
Yeah, I did some quick math as Dr. Walker was giving us some potentially eligible expenditures, and I'm at about 13.9, and that was a real broad brush. So
15,000.
would, I would say, get it if we went at that level.
I make a motion that we approve funding up to 15,000 for COVID-related expenses, pending proof of providing to the county those documented expenditures. Probably butchered that a little bit.
Second.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded to approve up to $15,000 to the Raise My Head Foundation, COVID-related expenditures subject to proper documentation, and narrative that would tie those expenses to a COVID-related response.
Thanks, Brent.
Yeah. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Any opposition? Hearing none, the motion passes. So we will make them aware of that award recommendation. That'll be included in the report that I give to the commission on December 2nd, their approval. Then the other thing on the 2nd would be anybody that, and I think at this point we have 3 members that have indicated they will be attending. Like you said, you would not be able to. A couple I haven't heard from yet. So just let us know if you plan to be here for the commission meeting. And I think this would kick off, like I say, or I would say by 9:15, just depending on whether or not we have big attendance for the public hearing. I just don't know at this point. Anything else to come before the board today?
You want to do the minutes?
Yes, thank you.
You can tell I've been on a lot of boards. But it's amazing. Sometimes you do have to go back to the minutes.
Okay, that's true. Aaron, which minutes do you have?
Give me one moment and I can give you those exact dates.
Hey, Aaron, can you also tell us the date of the email that when you sent them?
Absolutely. That's what I'm actually looking for myself.
Better you than me.
Okay, that original email went out on November 19th and included minutes from October 13th through
The 16th.
November 6th, or November 16th.
November 19th.
I read them. I didn't see, I mean, I don't remember everything about this, but I didn't see anything that I thought was incorrect. So I would move we approve the minutes.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the meeting minutes for the stimulus review team for the meetings October 13th, October 26th, November 2nd, November 9th, and November 16th. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Now, is there anything else, since we've got the minutes approved? If not, I thank everybody for your time again today, time over the past months. We've done some good work. So I do appreciate everybody's time and everybody's expertise. See some of you on Wednesday morning.
Thanks for all your efforts, Brent, Lindsay, everybody. Hope. It's been a lot of work.
Yes, it has, but it makes you feel you've done something good for the community. So
That is right.
Not as much work as you're gonna have. Say that again, Lindsay?
Oh, no, you go, Dr. Walker. I apologize.
There's a lot of work to come, and I wish you all the very best of luck. And I'm really glad you have DRS in your back pocket.
Who are we?
Are we? Yes.
Oh my goodness. I've been worrying about this for weeks now. So you could have relieved a lot of worrying on my part if I'd known about them before.
Well, we only engaged them last week to do the extra support, so you would have just been stressing out this whole time anyway. Don't worry.
Good to know. Anyway, I'm glad you have that support. That's wonderful. You're gonna need it.
Yes, we are. It's going to be quite a sprint to the finish.
No kidding.
1 month from today.
and I'm betting on you guys.
Okay,
You'll get it done.
we will.
I'll
All
be
right.
rooting for you.
Move to adjourn, I guess.
Okay, I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
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 I'm not going to ask for any opposition. I don't hear any, so I think we'll consider that we're adjourned. Thanks.
See you, everybody.
Everybody, thank you again.